Welcome back to Beauty Marks Podcast. My name is Elizabeth Savion, and here we talk about all things embracing our story, cultivating community, and healing. And so I'm so glad that you're here. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review. All of that helps us to grow. And I'm just very excited to be here at Hi Hello Labs with a very special guest that I actually met at one of our She Cultivates through our She Cultivate event here in Orlando.
So much fun.
Yes. And I'm just so glad that we finally got to do this.
Me too.
You are a mental health counselor and you help women with people-pleasing tendencies.
Yes.
And so this is an important conversation.
Yes.
So welcome,
Thanks
Claudia
for having me. I'm so
Matos.
excited.
Yes. How are you feeling like being in real life? I know that we've talked certain things in Zoom, and then also you've done podcasts on Zoom. So how does it feel in person versus
I love this. This is so fun.
Yeah, we need to get you more in here.
Yeah,
for sure.
This is
So for
really
those
exciting.
people that don't know you, what are you passionate about? What brought you into the work that you do?
A lot of things. I've been in this field for a really long time. I've gone through the healthcare field. I've gone through the community mental health side of it. I've done a lot of different things, but I think what really drew me into the private practice, working with my ideal client, with the people pleasers, with my couples that are struggling with their love, is my own experience, right? Like we've all been through that experience where you're just not getting the things that you want and you're exhausted and things aren't going your way. And finally, one day I was just like, something's got to give. Like this can't be normal, number one. And this can't be my life. And not only just as an individual, but in my relationships, you know? And I think that's where I really drew that passion for the couples that are dealing with their own struggles, whatever it may be, learning how to talk to each other and ask for what you need, right? So it really ties into all aspects of your life as a people pleaser.
Yeah.
So not just as an individual, but it leaks into everything, right?
Yeah. And you feel it. You're like,
Yes.
why do I lack boundaries in this part? And I feel like you don't even know what a boundary is. I feel like as a people pleaser.
No, there's no such thing.
No. And I feel like I just want to say, and I know you guys have heard this before, but I am a recovering people pleaser.
That's what I say, yes.
Okay, so you get
Welcome
it.
to the bright
Yes.
side. We made it.
We made it. But honestly, me saying that is because I feel like some people would think like, oh my God, you're like that because that's how you were built. It's like, no, you have to learn how to set boundaries and actually like learn your own needs. And especially when you've been maybe your whole life struggling with people pleasing, and just where does that start? Like, can you explain that for someone maybe that they're like, I've been like this my whole life?
Yeah, it's definitely something that we've learned, right? And it can come from a bunch of different stories. So the stories are wide and they range from A to Z. So there's not one type of story that goes, oh, if you were raised this way, you're a people pleaser. It doesn't work that way. But it comes from a lot of just that habit of being so focused on everybody else but yourself. So a lot of times when we're younger, if we have maybe parents that weren't emotionally involved with us or really emotionally available, we learn to sort of be independent, right? So you hear that a lot, where I was the independent child. I was the easy child. No one ever bothered for me, or they didn't care what I did. I just got my straight A's and I moved on.
Yeah.
So you've heard the stories. It's like
Yes,
that, where
that
you
was
just
me.
sort of, same. I was
Yes.
always like, I got this. No, don't worry.
Yeah.
I got it. I'll figure it out. And that's usually where it comes from, because you're so focused on like, how do I get to the next point without interrupting anyone else, right? I don't want to shake anything up. I want to make sure everyone's calm and peace and happy. And then guess what? That leads into adulthood. And then we're stuck going, why doesn't anyone care what I think? Or why doesn't anyone check up on me when I'm having a bad day?
Yeah.
And that's where it becomes really tough.
Yeah. Because you feel like when you're a people pleaser, is it that you don't have needs, or is it that you just don't express them? Like, what's internally the battle that you see a lot of people?
I think the biggest battle is making sure everyone else is happy, right? Like you're nervous to upset somebody else because of what that looks like. So people that are, and I hear this a lot, guys, they don't like confrontation.
That's a hard
Who's
one.
raising their hand for this, going, it's me, it's me. Yeah, no, I get it. But it doesn't necessarily always have to be confrontational. And that's the biggest thing I teach my clients, is when we're setting our boundaries, they're going to be met with disappointment, because you've always said yes, you've been the yes man. But we can set our boundaries respectfully, and we can say, hey, I appreciate you inviting me out, but I'm just really tired today, and I'm just going to stay home tonight with the dog and relax and watch a movie without rocking the boat or, being disrespectful, whoever it is, whether it's friends or families or your romantic relationships. There's a healthy way to do it, which is what I'm really passionate about, right? Because I've seen people set boundaries and it goes really south, and they're like, what the hell just happened? Well, it's because we went about it the wrong way, right? We can do it in a nice way, where it's like, I'm setting my boundaries and I'm putting my foot down and I'm saying enough's enough. And I'm also getting my needs met while you're getting yours met too.
Yeah. I think that when you're first finding like your voice, that's how it feels like. You're like,
Mhm.
I am like the villain. And all
Yeah.
it is
It's
like
so
you
you feel
saying
so
no,
guilty,
but
right?
you feel so guilty because
Mhm.
you're like, I am the yes person and I always am the go-to person. I am always there no matter what, even if I'm
Mhm.
sick, even if whatever. And then it's like you
Yes.
kind of refraining from or not being as present, there comes a lot of guilt with that.
Mhm.
So, I think do you walk with people through that
Of
of, like,
course,
the
yeah.
shame, the guilt that you feel from saying no?
Yeah, of course, because it's gonna be negative things that you're thinking, right? Because
Mhm.
you rocked the boat, so now something's gone wrong and now it's your
Mhm.
fault. I know that's everyone's immediate thought, like,
Mhm.
Crap, I made them upset," or
Mhm.
"I should've just said yes and dealt with it," or
Mhm.
whatever. So, walking through the uncomfortable I don't know if it's necessarily I know guilt is there, but I think it's more the uncomfortable feeling, right? Of, like, we're not
Mhm.
used to doing that and we're not used to this reaction,
Yeah.
so we associate it with guilt,
Yeah.
and it's not a bad thing, but
Mhm.
now we know it's okay. It's gonna be uncomfortable, but as time goes on, it gets better.
Yeah.
And it gets easier to say, hey, I'm sorry, I just can't,
Yeah.
or I don't really want that. That doesn't line up with my values or
Mm.
my whatever.
Yeah.
So it becomes a
But
lot easier.
I feel like when most people think about, like, maybe I'm not a people pleaser, but it's like, what would you ask? What are the questions that they should ask themselves to maybe be like, maybe that is you?
I
And maybe
think
that's just how you've done it.
that's a good one. I would say asking, like, are you afraid to say no? I think
Okay.
that's the biggest one, right? I think a lot of us are afraid to stand up for ourselves. That's another huge question. Like, do you struggle to stand up for the things that you want and that
Mhm.
you need in your life? And
Mhm.
again, whether it's personally, individually, professionally, because I work with a lot of professionals,
Mhm.
in your relationship, do you struggle to stand up for yourself? Are you
Mhm.
concerned about what others are going to think?
Mhm.
That's a huge one. If you're really concerned about what your friends, your family, whoever is going to think about your response,
Mhm.
chances are you're a people pleaser.
You're like, then maybe. But you see, there's recovery.
Yeah,
You
there's
can get through.
recovery.
It's like because the other part of people pleasing is that nobody wants to say that they're a people pleaser because it's
Mhm,
like, no, I'm not a people pleaser. Like,
mhm.
I have my voice,
Yeah,
and I like it sounds very like if you're weak because of it,
mhm.
and powerless because sometimes that's what it feels like.
Yeah,
And I know that with my own healing journey, I had to get to the place of like, okay, so I do struggle with saying no.
yeah.
I sometimes in my relationship, I do things that I don't want to do, and I don't know why I can't say no. And I remember with my therapist, it was like that was my big like practice was saying no and actually being like, hey, I can't be there.
Did you
Hey,
see how your voice changed?
yes. No, I'm telling you, this is like who you
Yeah,
see today is a completely different
yeah.
person than I was because I was very passive. And
Mhm,
I honestly feel like that also made me resentful
mhm. Yeah,
because I always felt like how you said a little bit earlier, like I'm always there for people and I do this for people. And like, I'm sick and I'm still here. And like, you think you're helping,
yeah.
right? By being there and saying yes, but you're really um not valuing your own needs and your own voice. So
You're
you're
not
pretty
putting
much
yourself first,
yeah.
and that's the biggest thing that people pleasers struggle with, right? Just
Mhm.
like you said. And it's tough because you do get resentful and you'll be surprised that once you start
Mhm.
setting boundaries, you lose a lot of people. But I
Mm.
think that's definitely I think that's part of the journey that I enjoy the most is really encouraging people to say, "Hey, who has stayed in my circle? Who has been like,
Mhm.
"Oh, Elizabeth, you don't want to come? Girl, I get it. Do you want me to bring you something? Are you
Mhm.
all right? Have you had a long day? You want to talk
Yeah.
about it?" That's the
Mhm.
sort of reaction that I'm looking for now, right? Like
Yeah.
I want people to say, "What do you need?"
Mm.
Because I do it too. And
Yeah.
it's only fair, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not asking for anything crazy.
Mhm.
But you'd be surprised, and I think that's a big part of the transition that's tough for a lot of my clients is they go,
Mhm.
"Well, so and so hasn't called," and I'm like, "But the phone works both ways, you know? Same as texting.
Yes.
Everyone's on their phones,
Yes.
guys. No excuses.
Yeah.
Everyone's on their phones, so if they wanna check on you, they will, and those
Yeah.
are the ones that you really wanna keep close. Those are the people that you want in your circle.
Yeah. What about for you? Like, I know that the work that you do comes from like your own
Mhm.
process and journey. So, what did it look like before for you? Like, without?
I was exhausted.
Yeah.
I was so tired. And I was, I think, just so emotional because, like I said
Mm.
earlier, it was a lot of going through difficult things and realizing that the people I thought who would be with me weren't. And
Mm.
that's heartbreaking. And
Mhm.
honestly, it is like going through a heartbreak when you lose a friend, right?
Yeah.
It's the same concept, or a
Mhm.
family member or whoever. When
Mhm.
the relationship ends, you grieve and
Yeah.
it really sucks. There's no other way to put it. So, I
Mhm.
mean, I know for me going through my journey, it was rough. I can't sit here and say it was gorgeous and rainbows and
Mhm.
butterflies. It was really rough and it was
Mhm.
dark and I was really emotional and I was really
Mhm.
hurt. I was
Mhm.
really, really hurt. But then I think going through the uncomfortable, like I said, and
Mhm.
being able to see who stuck in the circle and said, you know what, Claude, you're right. Whatever you need, I'm
Mhm.
here. Let's do this together.
Yeah.
Let's be in a good relationship, a friendship, whatever.
Mhm.
And now I'm so grateful. My circle is small, but it's so meaningful, right? It's the
Yeah.
quality over the quantity for me.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm really grateful for. So the ones that have stuck by, I
Mhm.
cherish them,
Yeah, and they've grown with you as
of
you evolve
course.
as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes when people know you a certain way too, they are like, you're that person. Like they want to keep you in that spot of who you were.
Yes.
And so being able to, as you're working through your own healing and seeing those things of like, actually, no, I know I was like this before,
Mm-hmm.
but now I'm not.
Yeah.
And that can be like how you said uncomfortable because I think for the people pleasing part also that I struggled with was because I didn't know what my needs were and what my boundaries were. I didn't know a lot of that.
Yeah. You
So when
weren't
you're
given the space.
no, and so I feel like when you're first starting out it feels very foreign
Yeah.
to you because you're like, yeah, but like I am that person. You become like the savior
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
everybody. You're like that
The
person.
superhero for everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then it's like no one should have that responsibility. Like
Mm-mm.
that's really heavy to carry. So what would be like the first things that if someone wants to change that about themselves or to be like, what do they need to do?
I think what you said was so important, figuring out what you need first, right? We've put ourselves on the back burner for so long. So, one of the
Mhm.
first steps I tell my clients is what is it that you want? What do you need?
Mhm.
Again, whether it's a relationship or a friendship, what are the
Mhm.
qualities that you're looking for?
Mhm.
Who is that person that you want next to you? And what
Mhm.
does that look like?
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of people look at me and go, I don't even know. I don't know what I
Mhm.
want. I've never been asked that.
Mhm.
So that's the first step is for sure determining what do you want and then how do we get there? And I think that's where we
Mhm.
start to determine do we need boundaries in place? Do we need to end a certain friendship or a relationship? Do we need to
Mhm.
choose a different career? Do we need to whatever that looks
Mhm.
like because it falls into every part of your life.
Yeah.
So it's so important to really establish what is it? What are your values? What are your goals? And how are you trying to achieve them? And
Mhm.
who's there to cheer you on?
Yeah, the people that you have around you that actually champion
Mm-hmm.
your growth and I think that the people that care for you also want you to respect your boundaries.
For sure. They
Because
will.
I think when you were saying about like the people that don't, and you lose some people, it's because they benefit from your uncertainty and they benefit from your lack of
Availability
boundary.
and
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Versus actually being like, no, like that's good that you told me how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
That's good that actually get some rest today. Actually, and then you're like, are you sure? Like, are they
Yeah.
mad at me? So that's why I say you're recovering because I'm telling you, actually, within the past like 2 to 3 weeks, if I'm completely honest, I have had those moments of feeling like the people pleaser comes up. And I've had to like, I know I'm not there, but I know that I can go there,
Mm-hmm.
if I really
That's
like allow
powerful.
myself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, Liz, you are fine.
Yeah.
You cannot add anything else to your plate right now. You cannot be there. And unfortunately, you will not be able to go. And that's okay. Or even changing your mind. That
Mhm.
was a big thing for me too.
Yes.
Because
Oh, me
I feel
too.
like I always wanted to be like, I am a person of my word, right? So let's say something came up and then I couldn't go. And then, or I didn't feel like it. Before, I would still go. And I would like be mad about it after to be like,
Mhm.
oh, like I'm just so tired. I'm not in the best mood. But then now I'm like, I'd rather be honest with someone to be like,
Yeah.
hey, this is how I'm feeling. Or like, I've had like a really big mental load this week and I'm just not going to be able to be there. And that's not to say that that's a pattern because
Right.
that's a whole nother thing. That's what I sometimes people use certain language to like excuse certain things and
Yes,
it's like
girl.
not confront things. That's
Yes.
a little different. So how has that looked like for you? Like being able to navigate certain situations that you actually have to, set boundaries and find
It's
your
not been
needs.
easy, that's for
Mm-hmm.
sure, but I'm glad I'm doing it. I
Mm-hmm.
think what you said earlier was one of the biggest shockers to me when I started to set my boundaries that someone said, that doesn't sound like you." And I
Mm-hmm.
said, "But it is, you just never took the time." And
Mm-hmm.
that's where the biggest part is if like you said earlier, if your friends accept it and they're there and they're ready to support you and cheer you
Mm-hmm.
on and be your champion, like
Yeah.
that's what's important. So
Yeah.
like I said earlier, it's a grieving process, but I'm so glad I've gone through it. And like you said, recovery is there; it can happen. And yes, you're going to slip up. That's normal.
Mhm.
That's part of being human. We're emotional. We have a big heart. Everyone's got big hearts, and always tell people, don't change that. Like, don't change who you are. Stay the big loving person that you are, but just understand that you love yourself first. And that may sound selfish, but listen, I'm okay with being selfish, and it's not a bad thing. There shouldn't be a bad connotation around being selfish. So if you selfishly need a day off to sleep in and just Netflix and watch your girl shows or
Mhm.
whatever, that's okay. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. So I had to, sort of learn that myself, is understanding that, like, if I'm tired or if I've had a long day of sessions and, I'm supposed to go out with the girls and I just can't mentally do it, like, and to be honest, once you have the good group around you, the response becomes so much better and
Yeah.
more positive. So it's
Mhm.
easier to say, hey, if I'm being honest, I'm just mentally not there today. And I
Yeah.
think I'm just going to call it a night. And the
Yeah.
girls immediately would be like, understood. We'll miss you. See you
Yeah.
next time. No worries. Let us know if you need anything.
For sure.
And that's where I started to realize, like, oh, it's not so bad, like
Mhm.
it was bad in the beginning, but now
Yeah.
that I've gone through that weird, uncomfortable, and now that the
Mhm.
boundaries are set where they're supposed to be, again, that circle that's around me is they're tight and they're awesome and they're
Mhm.
respectful and they're amazing. And I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
So I think, if anything, I'm grateful to have gone through this journey as hard as it was
Yeah.
and as much as it tested me.
In different areas, for
Yes,
sure.
I guess I
And
can look
when you
back and
said
be,
about like confrontation, like what does that look like? When people say like, okay, but like I don't have to deal with things. Like I can just like avoid. Like, what do you have to say for people that are like, I just don't like confrontation?
girl, no one does. Right? And that's what I tell them. No one likes confrontation. I don't like
Yeah.
confrontation. I don't think anyone is excited to wake up and like start a fight or an argument with someone, right? Like, that's
Yeah.
unrealistic. But
Mhm.
again, I think it's all in the approach. I think we can be respectful.
Mhm.
If there's situations that made me uncomfortable, I think it's okay to say, hey, that made me really uncomfortable when you said
Mhm.
whatever, or it made me really uncomfortable when you called me out about my weight again, or
Mhm.
whatever that looks like, without it
Mhm.
having to be such a serious issue and becoming such a negative thing.
Yeah.
And again, it also comes down to, like, who you're communicating with. Is that person open to changing? And that's something to pay attention to. That's something that I
Mhm.
tell my clients to pay attention to, what the response is.
Yeah.
If the response is positive and it's something along the lines of, hey, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I did that.
Mhm.
Like, how can we fix this for next time?
Mhm.
Those are the responses we want
Yeah.
versus, ugh, you're getting
You
emotional
again,
again. I
yeah.
can't deal. You're always
Mhm.
like this. Like,
Yeah.
those are the ones we want to pay attention to also, because
Yeah.
that's where we need to realize that that needs to be a big boundary set to go, hey,
Yeah.
yes, am I emotional? Yes, there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm setting a boundary. I need you to respect it.
Mhm. And sometimes those people, they lack their own boundaries, so
Mm-hmm.
they don't
For
even
sure.
so it's like they're going beyond,
Mm-hmm.
like themselves to and it's like people even people that lack boundaries, I feel like they can sometimes tell you what they need,
Yeah.
and so it's like, why can't other people have the same space to allow yourself to speak up for
Yeah.
yourself and advocate for yourself? I know that sometimes, like how you said, there's no like framework of what builds a people pleaser, but it's definitely like it can be a lot of factors,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also something that it's like it doesn't make you bad
Right.
for not being that person anymore.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that I feel like is liberating when you're like, wow, I could have set boundaries all along and I was going to be okay. And
Yeah.
even being the person like that always comes up with like solutions or always is like, I found that like if you don't do it, someone else will step up to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, let's say you're the person that like always sets up the parties or always does things for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't go or when you don't see like don't show up, it's either not going to be there and no one's going to do it and everyone's going to be like, oh, perfect, or someone else will step up
Yeah. For
and
sure.
do it.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
And that doesn't mean that you have to go beyond yourself or your capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So that was also something that I always thought. I'm like, yeah, but like if I don't do it, who will? If I'm not there, like, and that's like your anxiety sometimes. That's like
Mm-hmm.
controlling like everything else. And it's like, no, like, it's okay. You do not have to.
Yeah. That's so
So
true.
yeah, I feel like I had to work through that. But I
Mm-hmm.
know for a lot of people that are asking about people pleasing, can we go through a few scenarios
Yeah,
and
let's do
like
it.
walk through like how do you change from like a people pleasing to like, okay, I'm saying what I need and I need to be assertive and clear in some of my boundaries. So let's say it's someone that just feels like scared to bring up a topic, right? Like how do you start even bringing up a topic of confrontation with someone? let's say someone is like hurt your feelings, says
Mhm.
something that hurts your feelings, and usually you would be like, not gonna bring it up.
Yeah.
How would you manage that?
Again, respectfully, right? We
Okay.
don't want to come at it. I'm not pointing fingers at you. I might just come in and be like, hey, Liz, that comment you made the other day just really hurt my feelings. And I wanted to sort of bring it up to your attention so that maybe we can discuss it. And, and then maybe just explaining why it bothers you. And I know like there's a
Mhm.
lot of different scenarios, right? It could be, I don't know, what I'm wearing, what I'm eating. Who knows? I've been picked on about 1,000 different things, but there's just
Mhm.
some things where you don't know what people are going through. So I think
Yeah.
it's okay to explain, like, hey, that really bothered me, made me feel self conscious, it made me feel insecure. And I think it's okay, again, respectfully, just to say, like, hey, Liz, do you mind if we chat for a second? The other night when you
Mhm.
said, whatever you said, it
Mhm.
really hurt me. And you're a really good friend of mine. And I just want you to understand where I'm coming from so that we can have these vulnerable conversations.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's important is to understand that you're coming to them from a place of love. I'm not trying to fight you. I just
Mhm.
want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And as a friend, I want us to be vulnerable and have these conversations with each other.
Mhm.
So that's where we set this almost like set the precedence, right? Like I
Yeah.
just want to come to you and talk to you as a friend. This is how I
Mhm.
felt. This really bothered me, really hurt my feelings, whatever.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to, address it and help you understand how it made me feel so
Yeah.
that we can avoid that in the future.
Yeah. And you're trying to like bring closeness to the relationship,
Yeah,
to
of
the friendship.
course.
Because you deal with a lot of couples. So can
Hmm.
we talk about people pleasing when it comes to couples? What do you see a lot of
Well, I'm
in that the
sure
struggle?
I always see one partner doing the most.
What do you
Is
mean the most?
the
Please
one partner that
explain.
takes it on, right? They do everything and anything and they just go, "Well, I don't understand why they don't pick up their shoes or they don't want to cook dinner one night or they don't want to
Mhm.
because it's you've done it all, right? You
Mm.
wanted to make your partner happy for so long that we've
Mhm.
forgotten to say, "Hey, I'm really tired tonight. Do you think you can pick up dinner or you can cook dinner tonight or do you think
Mhm.
you can pick up the kids and, get them into bed and I just want to
Mhm.
relax for a second." So I
Mhm.
see that a ton. So it's
Mm.
incredible to see how it bleeds into all parts of our lives.
Yes.
But in relationships, for sure, being able to say, hey, like, I'm just really exhausted. I had a long day.
Mhm.
Like, can we just order out? And again, with moms, with people with kids, it's really stressful. Just in general, I mean, we have dogs. So it's like for us, it's, hey, can you take your dogs out tonight? Like,
Mhm.
I'm really
Yeah.
comfy on the couch. I don't want to move.
Yeah. So did you have to develop that to be able to do you feel like you worked through that while you were like single, or was it like it came up in your relationship of like, ooh, that's
Yeah,
areas?
for both.
Yes, for
I
both.
would say both for sure. I think when I was single, I was able to reflect. Now in my marriage, it's different, right? We had to learn how to be vulnerable with each other. So understanding that I, number one, am able to ask for help, which I never thought you could do because as a people pleaser, we don't do that, right? You don't ask people for help. You don't ask someone to come and take care of something. And that was something I had to learn because my partner would always be like, "Why didn't you just tell me? Why didn't you just ask?" And I would be like, I don't know. I don't know. I was never allowed to ask, or I never knew I could. I never had the safe space to do it or to say I'm hurting or whatever. So it was something that we had to learn together. And of course, it's not easy. Relationships are not easy, but they're beautiful. And I believe in love, and I'm a big cheerleader of love. I think it can happen. I think if you work at it, it's worth it and it's gorgeous. But you've got to be willing to be vulnerable with each other and be able to say, like, hey, this is what I need. I have needs. We all have needs. Everyone comes to a relationship with their own baggage, and that's okay. But can we work through it together so that I'm not just by myself? And can we do it to strengthen each other? Right? Not do it to, I don't want to step in as your therapist, but I want to step in as your supporter. And I want to make sure you feel supported and understood the same way I do,
Yeah.
because then you're set up for success.
Yeah. Because like you also have someone that can support you and that can be there
Mhm.
for you. And I think that's the beautiful thing of seeing that, like, I would say recovering people pleasing. It's like then you realize that there are people that care for you and
Yeah.
that you don't have to do it alone.
Mhm.
Like, because when you're so in that space of like, I'm fixing, I'm solving, I don't need help, I don't like that, how you said is exhausting.
Yeah.
And so being able to say, like, wow, I have people that I can ask and say, actually, like, hey, can you help me with this? And they'll actually be like, yeah, of course, and go do
Yeah. It's
it.
great. It feels
You're like,
amazing.
wow, okay.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And how would you say that that resentful part, can we talk briefly about that?
Mhm.
What do you feel like stems that resentfulness of like, you know?
That little, like, ball of fire is what I call it.
Yeah.
It's like you're like, "Oh, dang it, why didn't I know?"
Yeah.
I think it just comes from putting yourself on the back burner, right? Like,
Mhm.
there's really no other excuse for it. I think a lot of people get resentful because they go, I've been doing this for so long. Like it's just not fair. Like, why did I allow this? And that's where a lot of the resentment comes from, right? Because you're going, well, why didn't I see this? Why didn't I change it? Like, I deserve better. Like when the light finally goes off, you're like, holy crap. I can't believe I dealt with this for so long. And I think that's where a lot of, like, I call it the ball of fires. I'm like, it's in there. You got to let it out, whether it's a good cry, a sappy movie, write a letter, do something.
Yeah.
But I think that's where a lot of it comes from, because you've gone so long just putting yourself as the last person.
Yeah.
And that sucks. There's no other way to put it. There's no other good way to say that.
Yeah. And until you start actually noticing that and being like, okay, no, I actually matter too. And because I feel like people that maybe haven't dealt with people pleasing, they think that that's just normal. Like, it's like, oh no, like, yeah, myself. It's like, no, I don't know myself. I don't know how to. So it's like a scary thing of thinking of self. And I know even like, if you've been, like how you said, in relationships like that, or all your friendships are like that, or your family members are at work, like they bleed in all the areas. So you're just always you put yourself in that position in all those areas.
And you're exhausted.
Yes.
It's exhausting for y'all to do it. I don't know how you do it, but it's exhausting. And if you want to talk about it,
we can talk about
it. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, no, it can go deeper, because I definitely feel like until I got to the root of where that came from, and like started seeing like, wow, like I was believing in myself that I needed to be in that position.
Yeah.
And I was put from like a young age to be that way. So it was like, as I started like getting my voice, I feel like I was like empowered by it. Now I am that person, like with my family, within a lot of things, that actually say things. Like I am more the confrontational.
And it feels great. I love you guys, but it feels great.
No, but what's funny is like, because I didn't have a voice for so long, I think that's what it is. It's like you're kind of like utilizing now your voice.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, I'm going to tell you in like a loving way.
Right,
but like,
of course.
You are going to say it. Like, you're not going to fall back anymore. And you're also like, I feel like I'm advocating for the younger me.
Of course.
For that.
Yeah, it's an inner healing for sure.
Yeah.
And it's powerful.
Yeah.
When we get to that part, it's really powerful.
Yeah. So what would you say are some last things that you want to leave with someone that maybe is like, okay, I've been struggling with people pleasing, or I'm maybe working towards that. Just things to keep in mind, or tips.
There's a lot of really good tips. Let's see. Let's narrow it down. I would say the number one thing I tell everyone is there is hope. No matter how hard it feels, like we talked about here, there's ways to set the boundaries in a healthy way. There's ways to have those difficult conversations. There's ways to just, I think, be happy at the end of the day. That's the biggest important thing that you want in life. We only get one shot at this, right? So ride it out. Make this the best ride you've ever had. Yeah. So there is hope, and it's doable. It's doable. So just hang in there. If you're ready to talk about it, of course, we're here. I'm here. I'm ready to talk about it. I'm ready to go on the journey with anyone who's ready to do that. Whether it's, again, as an individual, as a couple, I love just helping people go through that journey.
Yeah. How can people connect with you and you help them on their journey?
Yeah. So I am located in Winter Park. I have a practice called Renew Therapy. I'm on Instagram at Renew Therapy, on TikTok, which I'm still learning, Facebook, and at my website at www.renew-therapy.com. So they can reach me there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know she shared, so she was part of our wellness event in April.
Fun.
Yes. And you share like the 5 tips of people pleasing, and you share different things. And I love that, because I feel like sometimes it's like you also can become aware. Maybe you don't know, and you're like, oh, that's good. Now I have like the awareness, and now I can put that into practice.
Yeah.
For my life.
Small steps.
Yes. Little small steps. I love it. So thank you so much, Claudia,
Thanks
for being
having
a part.
me.
And
this was great.
Yes. I think that a lot of us sometimes, again, like shame the narrative of people pleasing. And so I just wanted to bring a light to it and just talk about this, that I know I've struggled with it. You've struggled with it. And you can also see how you can gain your voice, feel more confident, feel like the more you know yourself too, or your story, things like that, that you're able to show up for other people in a healthier way. And so
I'm glad we had this conversation.
Same. Thank you so much. And
Thanks,
thank you
Liz.
guys for being a part of this week's podcast episode. And make sure to subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and I will put all of Claudia's information down below. So I'll see you guys next week.